All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's special meeting of the Yountville Town Council. It is 1 p.m. And do we need a roll call again, please?
Councilmember Reeves? Here. Councilmember McKee Can't?
Here.
Councilmember Knight? Here. Vice Mayor Tripp? Here. Mayor Moeller?
Here. And we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance at our official public meeting at 3. So today I'd like to get a motion.
They did a wave.
Sorry. It's coming. To adopt today's agenda for our special meeting.
Mayor, I move to adopt.
We have a motion by McKee Can't and a second by Tripp. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That passes unanimously. Now is the time for public comment. So this is public comment that is not on today's agenda. So today's agenda is anything about the Yountville Commons. So if you have a public comment that's not related to that, come on up to the microphone. Everyone's looking down or fishing through their purses. So I will go ahead and move on to the main item of our study session.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say that we received a letter, and I'm not sure if that becomes part of the public record or so.
Yes, so that has been forwarded to council and included in the agenda packet that is published currently. Okay. And that was for the Yountville Commons item.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes?
I just wanted to make an announcement about why I'm wearing a mask. I am not contagious, and I was exposed on Saturday to someone who tested positive for COVID on Monday. I tested negative today, but I just didn't want to expose anybody else.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So the Yountville Commons study session, I am going to turn this over to our town manager to run this, and you can kind of explain how you would like to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Brad Rolston, your town manager. I want to introduce Brendan Kelly, who's sitting next to me, and his partner, Carrie Morgan, who are in the audience. They'll have their opportunity to speak here in a moment and talk about their experience, and I'm referring to them as our lead designers, but we also have other people that are working on the project, and we can kind of get into the details in the Q&A. As a reminder, the council created the study session as an opportunity for the council and the community to interact more openly. We still have, as we all know, Brown Act, and the reason we're calling these meetings to order and taping them is we're required to do that. However, this is intended to be a more open-ended dialogue. So once we have designed 3 breaks into the presentation, and at each time I can either go into the audience with a microphone, which is sort of what I did last time, or people can come to the podium, whatever you're most comfortable with. Obviously, this is also the time for the council to share your thoughts and ideas, but less structured, not push a button, request to speak, or not, you only have 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So this is really intended to be a dialogue, and that was established last year when we created our handbook and we created this new type of meeting. In the back table, and the council has this, we have both a card that's 2-sided that talks about the process, which this will be the pause slide or the question. So when you see that slide on the presentation, that will be the point in time where we will stop and encourage dialogue. The other thing that is on the table is the full PowerPoint presentation, so you can follow along, and you can also use it as a reference after the meeting. We are intending, after I finish with the kind of the formalities, to have me start with about a 5-minute overview of what's happened to date and where we're at with the interim stuff. I'll then introduce Brendan, who will focus on the future and the idea of it, envisioning phase, as we called it. You may, this board was presented at the open house back in April. And then I'll talk about the dots here in my closing remarks, where I will sort of bring it back to City Council goals and the goals that were established earlier this year. And so the hope is that I'll talk for 5 minutes after I finish talking now, and then 20 minutes for Brendan, and then 5 minutes. So we want to talk for like 30 minutes, and then obviously y'all can talk as long as you want, but we have a 2-hour time frame, and I know we hope to have a gap before our next meeting. So I would just keep everyone mindful of the clock. And I will also tell you, we have a next on the chart here is our August 19th open house, which is actually a Monday. So we do intend to have a similar format than we had at the first open house, 3 to 6 o'clock. I've been working with Hillary mainly, but also Brendan and other people involved in updating our frequently asked questions, our facts. And I will tell you, even the public comment we received that you have in your mail had some good questions in it. So we're compiling questions, and we intend to put out a public document, which will also evolve in terms of it being one of those living documents. As we get questions from the community, we want to provide consistent answers. So it's much easier to do that through facts than trying to have ongoing dialogues. However, saying that, one of the things that you will see, in which Brendan will be doing Tuesday mornings, is office hours over at the school. And so this QR code that's on the back side of the timeline will give you the ability to set up a one-on-one appointment with Brendan to share your ideas, because I do know for many it's uncomfortable to speak into a microphone and to be in this, even though it's intended to be informal. I think there's an opportunity for everyone to come and talk one-on-one and share your ideas. Finally, I'll say this is not a decision point. This is a beginning of the idea and visioning phase. I will share what we're doing and what we're proposing for the interim and kind of where we're at with that, but that direction has been given by council. We have the budget. We're moving forward. So just tonight is just an update and then a beginning of a process. So this is a perfect time to ask questions and start to the brainstorming. This is designed to be about a 6-month process, and you can see how the process sort of starts and ends here with the council. And our hope is in early 2025 to be at a decision point so the community feels comfortable moving forward. So with all of that, I'll just quickly go through some updates. I should have probably flipped to the side when I said all the things I just said, but this again is the timeline that's on the card. This is the context of the site, the aerial, so you're familiar obviously with we acquired 6.8 acres, but when you add town hall, it's roughly 8 acres. It's bordered by both the Bardessono Hotel and the Hopper Creek Apartments, to the north and the south, and then there's the creek and obviously Yount Street. And I wanted to show, this is something that hasn't really been shown before, but as we were, talking about the future of the site before we acquired it, the school district came forward with these proposals, and this was really, in my view, their intent to increase the value of the property. But it shows you, I think, if the town didn't control it, what is unfortunately possible. And this leverages state laws, density bonus laws. If you layer in affordability, you can see these proposals both maxed out the site and, really didn't have much open space or any public amenities at all. So thankfully, we acquired the site. In that process, we did have a community open house in March. Many people attended. We got a lot of good feedback, and I think we've been utilizing that as we think about both the interim and the future. These are some renderings of what things will look like when we're finished with the interim. We have been now moving forward with the Wellness Center, and I'll talk about the farm stand, but we're referring to the multi-purpose room, which is the main building here, as the Commons Hall. That will be painted and improved to complement the community center that obviously you all know down the street from here. So the intent is to create this, I guess, connection between the two buildings and making sure that the uses are both, compatible, but also like complementary, and that, Sam does a great job of programming the community center, but in many cases we either can't accommodate or we have to displace things. So the Commons Hall is really a huge benefit for us being able to have some redundancy so we can do events and other things and maintain existing programming. So here's just a few images, of the lawn, and this is the proposed lobby of the new wellness center that we're working on. Here's the snack shack that will become a 6-day-a-week farm stand. Here's a most recent shot of the dog park. You can see they're watering, trying to get the grass going back there. But have we announced, Sam, that we're going to open this on August 19th? Is that something I can say? Okay. So the intent at the open house at 6 o'clock is to do some doggy ribbon cutting. So that'll be, and I keep explaining this is an interim park because obviously as we design the future, we're looking at everything. But there is obviously a hope that this is successful and that will sort of lead to future successes. There's a dying community garden. We intend to bring this back to life to some degree. You saw a lot of the blacktop and sort of surface improvements, tree trimming, et cetera. This is the backside of what we're calling Commons Hall now. We've been having camp there all summer, which has been great. I think, the camps have been well attended, and it's been good to see the kids around. So that ends on August 18th or 16th. So the open house will be the Monday after camp ends. So this then gives us the ability to go in there and do the painting and do the additional work. With the hopes of all of this interim work wrapping up towards the end of the year. We've announced that we're going to celebrate our 60th anniversary on February 4th. So we're really working hard to make sure these interim improvements are there, and we want to have a celebration, and hopefully we'll do it there, and we'll have the ability to see all this and access it. So all exciting stuff, and again, things that we're working on. So I will pause here if there's any questions or discussion. Brendan will then take the next 100 slides or whatever you put in there and kind of talk through the future. So is there anything anyone wants to talk about as it relates to process or the interim?
Direct him towards Brad. He's in charge.
Yeah, I don't want to have to try to look at the whole room at once. So feel free to stand up or raise your hand, but go ahead.
I just had one question. I think there's a lot of curiosity and maybe befuddlement about what is happening at the YES property. And would it be possible to put up a couple of billboard kind of signs that show round dates of when is the painting going to happen? When is this going to happen, and improvements? I don't know if that's a possibility, but also I think it would be great to have a bulletin board that says what this card says about the procedure of people taking part in these things, because I think it is important that we reach as many people as we can, and as people walk around town and they stop in front of the school and say, I wonder what's happening there. If we could have something that indicates how they might participate, would be really great.
Yeah, I think this is easy because it's dynamic, and I would tell you that at least painting and things are moving targets as we now have the budget authority to do that. But I think clearly this is something we can make as a construction sign or a job posting. Okay. So we can do something, so we'll work on that, yes.
The only thing I would add, too, is in addressing our timeline as we put it up here is that what I know the town staff and the council have been talking about, adding extensive office hours for residents to just come at a convenient time for themselves for an extended period of time from August to November is really giving people an opportunity to share their ideas and impressions as we go through the planning process. And like anything, we create timelines for Parks and Rec Commission or ZDRB, Zoning and Design Review Board. It's really a beginning of the planning process. So as we hear from residents and we plan, I know I'm open that if we need to go back to Parks and Rec and Zoning and Design Review Board, and all those members will participate in meetings as we go, that we'll do that. That this is an open process. It's important for us to get everyone's impressions, their opinions, and it's, as the town manager said, is an opening for a long process that will be, I believe, well planned. So thank you.
Thank you, and I will just amplify that by, thank you for bringing up boards and commissions. You can see the Park and Rec Board, Measure S, and CDRB are all listed. We're just trying to get a schedule date for Measure S. But I think you can think of those as focus groups, and I think as we go to those meetings, obviously Park and Rec, Measure S is about workforce housing, CDRB is our planning board. So the intent is, everyone can participate in everything, but when we go and drill down at those meetings, they will be more focused on their specific area of expertise.
I just really wanted to thank you and Hillary for organizing all this. When many of us looked at this, we wanted to be sure what we used to say kind of facetiously, that the train didn't leave the station. And I have to just really thank you for allowing this amount of public participation. And I think that the chance to spend a half hour with the architectural planning firm one-on-one is just a tremendous thing. I don't think I've ever heard of such a thing. So I really encourage everybody, if you can figure out QR codes, which are sometimes a little hard for some of us, to sign up. Thank you. I just think that's remarkable.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Brendan, for offering to do that. He's calling it a million cups of coffee, which I thought was funny, but I think it's a better setting to, just to have a dialogue, because, again, sometimes when you're on a mic, you feel like the world is watching, and, we have cameras on, so I get that. And I also would, I should have said, Hillary has created on our front, or what do we call our homepage on our website, a button that is Yountville Commons. So that also takes you to the scheduling, and it also provides a lot of information. So we'll keep adding to that site. So it's on our homepage. It's pretty easy to find, and it's a wealth of information. Was there anything anyone from the community wanted to share before Brendan takes the clicker? Okay, there you go.
Sometimes.
Is it okay if I sit?
Sure.
I'd rather sit so I can turn around and talk to other participants. I want to say, first of all, good afternoon, council members. We are very excited to be here. This is definitely the start of a million cups of coffee. This doesn't count as a single cup of coffee for anybody. This is just explaining a lot of how we see the world and some of the confidence that we have going into this. There will be very exciting times when ideas, and they will come from good ideas come from all kinds of directions. At the most surprising of times, there will be ugly times. There will be really hard to understand foggy times. But at the end, and we'll be back here, of course, in a number of months in a similar kind of meeting with not the perfect design, but with many alternatives for you to look at, understand, and talk about. I can guarantee that it won't be a series of skyscrapers, and I can guarantee that it probably won't be a national park, and it's not going to be a gas station or a Costco. But you can't sort of design a negative. It's going to be, I think, a number of things where hopefully it will be you'll see all kinds of good things. That's our job. And it's our job to not draw them, but elicit them from your vision and the vision of the citizens of this town. Before I get underway, I do want to tell you that we are not new to Yountville. We're not residents of Yountville, but I worked at Domain 40 years ago as a back waiter. And I have watched this town over that time period evolve, and it's always been a surprise. When something happens, this is the image, it's a Google Earth shot. A lot of the things that you'll see from us are not really going to, they will be, of course, about the site, but this site is connected to all four sides of it, and you'll always see in our models and our renderings things that are next to it and across the street and neighbors, and whether it's the creek or the bike trail or other things down the street, it's all about context for us. We've been rolling up and down Napa Valley for our entire professional and married life. We have 4 kids. They all went to or are still going to Justin Siena. One of them was born up in St. Helena. I know what the valley looks like in the middle of a flood stage because our kid almost wasn't delivered that way. So we have a lot of good memories about the valley. and our office is on Main Street in Napa, and we have projects here in Yountville, we have projects in St. Helena, and we have projects in downtown Napa. And one of our first projects was in downtown Calistoga when Nance's Hot Springs burnt down in 2003, and with John Merchant as the new owner, we reestablished that as an Indian Springs Lodge. That was 20 years ago, because that's how old my third son is. This is a graph that I included because sometimes it will seem like we're doing everything all at once, and it will be really hard to understand why we're doing one thing versus another. And this site, there's a few things happening simultaneously. I've spent a lot of my career as a developer, not just as an architect. I'm obviously an architect, and we help strategic planning as developers, sort of in a mindset. This is not my invention, but it's a way to understand how land moves and creates value for its owner. And so that and you can see from land banking, which is essentially what's just happened in the last few years as the school district banked that piece of land. And right now we're in a land packaging standpoint. And I want to take a moment, because of the acquisition and the financing, it is an extremely unusual thing about what just happened with the town purchasing this property from the school. I mean, congratulations. I honestly didn't believe it when it happened, and it was one of the reasons why we wanted desperately to work with this opportunity. These are rare things when visionary towns can make a decision like that and then start a process out of the way of what I would call a development, or a typical development pattern. So even while there's a lot of phases going on right now, the idea and the visioning, the things that we're talking about today, all the stuff that Brad talked about, and Brad and Sam and John and the entire team that's working on trying to make this long neglected building and site reusable for the next couple of years. No matter what happens to it, it's going to be a usable, functional thing. And that's actually over in this redevelopment site section. So sometimes it will appear like, well, what are they doing? Are they painting it, or are we talking about housing? Are we doing dog parks, or are we doing, farm stands? What are we doing? So, and this is an easy way to talk about to citizens across the table or in community meetings. We're doing it all at once, and this is why we're doing it all at once, because every dollar that you spend needs to add value to the site. Even if it's a short-term value, it still needs to add value. So this is, and down here in the lower right-hand corner, you can kind of see, the site constraints, that's what's going on right now. And the landscaping and the dog run, well, that's over in, cell 54. You can take almost any piece of real estate and analyze it this way for a specific owner. Owners think of things in a sort of down a column, because they typically own something in one of these columns. Designers, engineers typically move across the columns, which is why you hire them, because we're experienced in many different phases. So hopefully this helps, and it's a little bit of a roadmap for us, as it is for citizens and for the representatives for those citizens. And I'm happy to go back, because I can really geek out on this matrix, as you can tell. So the opposite end of the matrix is where we are in the world, and a way of seeing, and how to see things for other people, and how to explain and understand how they're seeing things. So sometimes we need to pull things apart. Where we are in the world. You may or may not recognize where we are in this one. This is the core. This is the center of Napa Valley, where we are, the hill right there at the edge, just to the east of the river. The river isn't a stream. In wintertime, this river is an unbelievable force, and the towns along the river have essentially had to turn their back for more than a century on this river, because it was such a changing sort of a Janus. It was a nightmare, and then it was nothing, and then it's a nightmare again, and then it's nothing. And we're slowly getting our hands around the river, but the human added elements, the trails, the roads, and now all of a sudden you're starting to see Yountville Crossroad and Silverado Trail and Highway 29, which sort of is much later than the town of Yountville, and you can see why Yountville is at the edge, the western edge of those flood stages, and these are all the man-made adds, right? This is all the vineyards, what grows, and a very highly regulated land plan for the county, which Yountville, sits in. The city limits of Yountville, unique because of the inclusion of the Veterans Home, very historic sort of part, and of course highlighted in red is what we're talking about today. Brad and I have talked about, well, if this is the heart of Napa Valley, I think this site is the heart of the heart. And I think we'll probably talk about it in that way in a lot of ways. So these are all the different levels. You can actually see the dividing lines between the AVAs, also human decisions. Even if they're attached to geographic things, these are human interventions along a very natural sort of piece. When you zoom in on something that we're trying to control, this is, of course, something you guys recognize as the zoning and the layout of the core of the town of Yountville. You can see very quickly the old town, the sort of the 300-foot by 300-foot city blocks, and some of these added pieces. But we'd like to strip things apart away from some of the overlays, and all of a sudden you can see Hopper Creek, which is draining thousands of acres to the west on a part of Napa County that's getting twice the amount of rain that the valley floor gets. It's a very important part of the Napa watershed. And of course, the site borders it, and it's an important sort of thing to understand and see what the limits and opportunities are. That red dotted line is about a 5-minute walk, what most healthy people can kind of do on a typical sort of afternoon from the center of this site. That's just me calling for more support. It's okay. This, with the help of one of Sam's maps that she hands out of the Parks and Rec, is the walking trail and all the green spaces, which are also not really built things, but it's really important. The leftover and the very specifically designed pieces. Yountville Park is off to the upper left, of course, but the walking trail, very much on purpose, connects all these green spaces, and of course, right at the center, the heart of the heart, is this site. It's not just a building site. It's a place where open space is going to be a really important part of the story. This is what we call a Noli diagram in the architecture realm. Noli was a designer in Rome, and he would help describe open spaces between the buildings to help understand where the public was invited versus what was private space. You can see, without a lot of understanding, that there's an eye of a needle here, right? Our site is unbuilt. Even with the school buildings on it, that's quite an opportunity for the town. And it will be obviously the focus, but you can see the scale of the development historically from the upper left, all the way through some of the bigger buildings, churches and hotels, and some of the more modern suburban overlays that happens to the kind of the lower right, whether it's in a mobile home or a subdivision from the 1970s. Long streets, not a lot of sort of cross streets. And there, of course, to every architect is a shot of a Noli plan from Rome, and you can see the inside of churches and Piazza Navona and the Pantheon. But we use these tools to help understand where public things are, where private things are, and how they come together, because 1 + 1, if we're successful, is going to equal 3. It has to. This site is too valuable for it to be only housing or only open space or only parking. It has to always be something else because it's that rare. So that's a brief exercise on where we think we are in the world. Of course, we're going to get told 1,000 things, but it was a helpful way for you to understand how Carrie and I kind of think about the region and the specific site. we did really draw every single one of those squares because you can't just do that on AI anymore. Okay, first principles. It's important that you understand how we think, and we want to be really clear with not just you, but with anybody that's ready to talk to us. Do no harm. My dad was a doctor. Carrie's brother's a surgeon. Do no harm is a really obvious thing. Yountville is already a carefully curated urban environment of residential, commercial, recreational, and institutional uses. This is a really, really carefully built place. The risks that you took by adding things, the grief that you took for resisting things is clear to anybody that walks through town. It's a rare thing in the Valley, and it's a rare thing in California. That's why people come here on their vacations. We're really enthused about places like that. It's why we live here. That achievement springs from something that we call in the lingo form-based architecture. It's how a laundry can turn into a restaurant, can turn into something else in 50 years. When we say form-based, this building that we're sitting in is a perfect example. It was a school, now it's a town hall, and it could be, a hotel in 50 years. That's a really long-established tool for towns to develop, long before there were planning codes where everything was separated by uses. And it's coming back, roaring back in style. And it's one of the tools that will be open to you, so that when you're seeing a building or a projected building, whether it's a public one or a private one, how long does it look like a background building that could be there for 50 years? Or if it's really figurative, will it be there serving what purpose? How guaranteed are you that it will sort of specify that thing for so long? It has to be functional long after it's done with its then use. And you can see some of the issues we're having with a school library turning into a fitness center, right? Those are some of the things that happened in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. The result is a high-quality public realm. You have that, using physical forms rather than a separation of uses as the organizing principle. I don't mean to kind of geek out on architecture lingo, but that's what's happening. The heart of when we describe to our friends, what are you doing in Yountville? We're making a place. This isn't a project. We're leading something. There's going to be a ton of designers who will have all kinds of contributions, whether it's on the small scale or large scale, landscape, architecture, engineering. There's a lot of problems to solve, and we are not going to solve every one of them. But if we have a basis about making a place, we will be able to go back to first principles and say, hold on, this is turning into a huge project that's going to start to move things to the side, and we have to go back to that. I talked about the list of potential alternatives. It starts with listening. We do call it a million cups of coffee. It really does feel like a million cups of coffee. I do like coffee. Carrie likes coffee. We'll have a coffee shop, not a coffee shop, a coffee machine in the office over there at room 11. And to your point, Councilman Knight, we've made Tuesday mornings available, 9 to 12, Saturday mornings once a month. Seeing the note here in the agenda, if somebody is working the night shift and the only time they have is 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, we'll make that happen. That's not a big deal. Our office is 15 minutes down the road. We'll make it work. Okay, so why us? We talked about this with Brad in some of the interviews. This is one of the projects that I did as the COO of Hart-Howerton, where I ran kind of the firm. It was a much larger hospitality-based firm. Middle Green Valley is a specific plan. It covered 2,000 acres. 1,800 of it is now in conservation easements. The county was our client, and it started with meetings just like this, public meetings, and actually neighbors who really didn't like each other for decades. This is now approved. It's gone through EIR. It's all and the inclusion of town squares and different housing types. It almost, if you kind of blur your eyes, you can actually recognize Yountville. And when the neighbors in Green Valley didn't understand what we meant by rural, clustered, mid-density housing, we literally rented a bus and we drove them to Yountville 12 years ago. And we let them off. We walked around for probably an hour, and then we drove them up to St. Helena, and then we drove them back to Green Valley. and said, well, you don't have to go far. Yountville, for us, is a instructive place to tell people what mid-density and low-density rural archetypes can be. So it's nice to actually not have to explain it. You have a terrific laboratory right here. These are different house types, different archetypes. They eventually sort of get very packaged so that rules can be followed, but everything is based on some of these first principles that we talked about. These are all results of a specific plan, and we don't need to go through the details, but it goes to our level of understanding that there's a difference between a sketch and a very important deliverable that other developers or other landowners can find to follow rules. These are rule books. These are Lego instruction books. And, of course, we used a lot of houses and buildings from Yountville to help us define these. Another project that I worked on at Hart-Howerton was Palmetto Bluff in South Carolina. This is a mid-density 3-story. This is not an old historic town. This town started with an auberge. It now has a montage. This town is no more than 20 years old, and was established and developed by Duke Energy as a new town, literally to try to copy some of the South Carolina patterns. You don't have to wait forever for real places to happen. The historic trees, the paving, the dappled sunlight, some of the archetypes, even the chapel, all are brand new. We included this because this is less than 3 years old, smack in the middle of Charleston, North Carolina. I'm showing these projects. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm so happy to see these projects, 2, 3, 4 stories, what I call the missing middle or mid-density. This whole thing is less than 3 years old. And, of course, if you're in Charleston, you're very concerned about things looking like Charleston. If you're in Yountville, you want things to look like Yountville. And the reason I brought this up is that the yellow is driveways, fire, parking. Cat Fiddle is a really great name for the street. It's an acre, but there's over 48 little two-person apartments, 48 parking spaces. It has no lawns or big streets. It only has narrow lanes, and it's lush urbanism. And I bring that, I include it in the presentation today because it gives me hope. We need hope, and we can't, and we can look outward and see really great projects happening around the country. We don't have to go to France or China or anything else like that, and we don't have to go to Disneyland either because it's a real place. So a lot of the process is going to happen in these community meetings, just like this, and the open houses that Brad described. We use a tool called This Not That. When we put up images, this is an easy one. These great pedestrian throughways so that public passages can be found on blocks. And this is a terrific project on Soskull. It's a 3-story, 50 units. But I think I'm not going out too much on a limb, but I don't think that the right-hand image is going to end up landing one huge mass in the middle of the commons. I just don't see it. So this was an easy thing for us to risk by saying it's going to be this, not that. When we put images up, we will have a chance for everyone to put the stickers, a green and a red sticker, and we will very quickly be able to say, hey, from this open house or from this community meeting, it was this, not that. So everyone understands it wasn't our choice, it wasn't your choice, it was, and these come together very, very quickly. Everybody loves pocket parks and pocket neighborhoods, especially in towns this size. These are very well established ways to join density and open space. Again, the 1 + 1 has to equal 3 for this project. And these pocket neighborhoods where the mailboxes are collected and where there's gardens and other things like that. This is a very, very common West Coast, and it's spreading to other parts of the country. This is a good example of typology. A duplex, a triplex, fourplex, all same sizes. You have double the number of units on the one on the right, and they're all domestically scaled. This is the missing middle that we sort of are, hear about in a lot of the literature. There's ways to cluster these things and to make tight walkways. I'm not selling any of this architecture. None of these are our projects, but it's a way to help people understand that just choosing an archetype doesn't mean anything if you can't join it with other working things and then create some of the public walkways, the recreational opportunities, or the public serving purposes, or the businesses, the local neighborhood serving businesses, the hairdressers, the accountants, the lawyers, all those things. Can you guys guess which one's in Yountville? So these, of course, are taken, within a block of the site. You have terrific workforce housing already there on the side of the Bardesano piece. The ones in, I think the upper right one is in San Francisco. The lower left one is in France. They're terrific award-winning architecture projects. We will see those. People will bring these projects to us, and we will say, fantastic, this is great. It goes really well in San Francisco, and here's why. So a lot of our time will be spent understanding and explaining back to them the scale through models, especially so they understand what a 5-story building looks like versus a 3-story building. You have 3-story buildings at Hopper Creek, and we will include those in some of the models. The rural town archetype is well established long before Yountville was established. This is, of course, from the Cotswolds, but there's versions all over the world, in Asia and South America. And the commonality of materials, it's obviously very dense, but the public spaces are clear. And you wouldn't understand which one's a restaurant, which one's a business, and which one is a vacation home or somebody's apartment. That's the idea about form-based architecture. This is a great project from 1920s Florida. 6 apartments, 6 businesses, all on top of each other, creating a beautiful little courtyard in addition on a 50-foot lot. That's all they had to work with. So this is an example of making something more than just the private spaces that you're given on a lot. You have to be able to, where's the fountain? How do I get all the way through it and then to the other side? And of course, the recreational parts of this parcel are going to be a big part of the story. The pool to the left is actually a pool that I had a hand in designing. It was a community pool. I had no role in designing the dog park on the right, but the dog parks, whether it's dogs or little kids, Carrie and I were managers and scorekeepers for our own kids' Little League. Little League is a huge thing. District 53 champs from Napa. It is anyone that tells you Little League is going away has not been to a Napa Little League game even this summer. And the great shot, I think, of your own park there, the barbecue and the picnic areas is a big, important part, especially as the Vine Trail gets more and more understood with the big opening that's, almost 2 weeks away now. So the recreational pieces, the open spaces, the leftover spaces are a big part of what we're also, even though I call it all of this architecture. And I've mentioned the model before. We are trying to make sure that I'm not trying to sound snotty, and it can and it has sounded snotty. Most people really struggle to read a plan. And they are very polite, and they'll nod, and they'll understand when we say this is over here, and this is over here, and this is 3 stories, and this is 5 stories. That's a really difficult thing to show people. And it's one of the reasons why we will have a physical model. It will be very similar to this. I think the white doesn't help in this model, but we use models all the time. We had a model for the glider port transformation up in Calistoga 20 years ago, and it was really helpful so that everybody understood it. That we found a lot of endangered plants on the glider port, so it never really turned into anything, but it helped John Merchant understand. And now the development of Indian Springs and the rest of the Lincoln Ave, which is what we were doing, we used models like that in Calistoga. And office hours where everybody could come by and go, oh, that's what 4 stories looks like. Maybe that's not so bad. So that's our bias, and I just want to open it up. I've just given you a ton of information, and I'm happy to flip back to it and talk about images, but at least that gives you a way of kind of how Carrie and I are sort of seeing the world.
Okay. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, so this is our break slide. We'll have one more after I kind of close things up. But this is, I'm going to stand up with the mic so that if anyone just raises their hand, I can bring it to you. You can obviously come to the podium and counsel just like last time. Just raise your hand. I'll do my best. But I want to thank Brendan and Carrie. I mean, as you can tell, a lot of work has gone into this, but I do think this back to the beginning. This is the beginning, and I think just having imagery like that is inspiring. And I'm looking forward to seeing the model. I guess Carrie was a sculptor in college, so I'm anxious to see what the model looks like. But the intent is over what we're calling Room 11, which is the room right on the other side of the Commons Hall or the multi-purpose room, which was the special ed room when it was the school, will be where they will set up office hours. And the model, it actually works out really well because there's those that know that room, there's a glass sort of window into it. So the intent is to sort of have the model there on display. So truthfully, when you're out walking your dog, you can hopefully go look at the model and ponder the model, and then come set up office hours and talk to the designers and contribute to the process. So I'll do my best to read the room. And I said play the Phil Donahue. I think most people know the Phil Donahue. I'll run to you if you stick your hand, and you're welcome to have the mic, or if you're more comfortable with the podium, just come on up.
I just want to, mic's on, thanks, commend you. The do no harm actually echoes kind of what I think we want to do here, and certainly what the public wants to do. Yountville is a very special place, and we have to keep that special. Our natural environment and being linked by the creek there, and then being shoehorned in with the surrounding buildings and businesses, it's really critical. So the 1 + 1 = 3 is right on with what we need. We're elevating this space, and I want to commend you. I like the this, not that. So
we find it
a
very
great
helpful.
start. Thank you.
Great.
Nope. Go ahead. You can check and see if it's on. It's not on. Hold on. We'll get it on for you.
Thank you, Mayor Moeller and Council, for the opportunity to speak to you today. I love the fact that you bought this property. I love the fact that it's called Yountville Commons, and I love the possibilities that are in front of us. When I'm asked to have ideas, guess what? I have a lot. And now that I'm not working, I don't have to implement those ideas. Somebody else can. So here's some of the things I thought. One of the major things that somehow came into my mind was the peaceful outdoor components of something like this. I'm thinking of an artistic water feature, a fountain with a soothing sound. That was an initial concept for the community center that somehow fell apart for budget reasons, and maybe now it's time that we consider that again. Another is interesting and enchanting lighting to make this place interesting to be at night, sparkling lights, or from time to time you see canopies with the individual light bulbs, and it's very festive. And so I think that would be something that people would enjoy. This is way out there, but how about a couple of community cats that would live there and be cared for by volunteers? And there's nothing more comforting than watching cats. Comfy chairs in which people can read newspapers, of course, books, and their devices, maybe with upholstered cushions, which could be taken in after hours. A large public garden, which you've also talked about, where plots could be rented and excess produce shared with the public. And I think whenever the town takes on a project this large, which probably won't again for a long time, there needs to be something to recognize our veterans and the veterans home. I don't know whether that'd be art or what it would be, but it's just something that needs to be included. And as far as the affordable housing, yes, and I even think that the the 3 stories is something that we should consider. You showed some excellent examples of that, and it's new to us and it's a little foreign to us, but I think this is a time where we need to consider it very carefully because we need that housing. And of course, I would like to see it sited on the north part of the site here. I don't drink coffee, but I eat coffee ice cream. So I might come to see you, but I think this is really exciting, and I think you've done a very good job of staking this out, and I'd just like to see a whole bunch more people come forward with their ideas. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. And I'll have coffee ice cream. Good idea.
I'll be there.
Who doesn't like coffee ice cream?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. The first surprise I had was that this process is going to be over in terms of the planning phase by February. Do I understand that correctly? That's exciting, but looking at the few people here today, I think you're going to have some really, and I know you've reached out, but you're going to have some people that really feel they've missed the boat. And so the more outreach, I don't know how you do it. I know you work hard at it, but I think that that's an important thing to recognize. The other thing is, when are we going to see, major construction going? So if we're talking about a 3-story affordable housing unit, in your timeline, and I know it depends on financing and everything else, but as you think about this, is that 3 years away, 10 years away? So that's one thing, too, that I think would help in this planning process, because once you start moving dirt around, then it gets very real and people really know they missed the boat. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll respond, just a few quick things. First of all, the process is 6 months, designed to start and end with the council. If the council decides in 6 months or whenever we get back we need more time, then we need more time, right? It's, to me, the council's decision after we've done the lap. As it relates to construction, hopefully in 6 months we have direction to move forward, which then forces us into, what some refer to as the entitlement phase. And the entitlement phase, because there is, no matter what we do, if we change things, there's a zoning component, which then triggers a CEQA component, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. That's at least a year, I'll tell you. So after we've decided generally what the concept is, you're going to have to both deal with the financing and the entitlement phase, and that'll be at least a year. So if everything went perfect and like we loved it and we had all the money and we avoided any CEQA issues, the soonest things would be under construction would be 18 to 24 months. So I'll just put that out there in terms of, as you say, major construction.
I'd just like to echo the comment about people being unaware of the time frame and the ability to provide input at this point. This is wonderful to hear that people can have appointments. I will be seeing you. And, the fact that we've got a few things already going, the dog parks being built, there's, indication about the school, the snack bar being used and how it's going to be used. I think this is great that things are starting to move ahead, but I think it sends a message to some people that, we've missed out on the opportunity to put in input, and they're already moving ahead and it's a done deal. And so I think it's important to do a lot of education through the paper or whatever to the town about this time frame, and that there is time and ability to have input on this, that these are only some initial temporary or whatever ventures, but that there will be an opportunity for people to have input.
Yeah, thank you, definitely. I'll also remind you, those at the open house, that we had over 100 people at the open house, so we'll have an open house August 19th. Kim's obviously sitting here in the front row. I know you've been reporting all of this stuff. Yeah, and I think... I will tell you, it's always a challenge, right? I mean, I've been doing this 20 years now. I think that's always, you get to the end and there's people saying, God, I wish I knew this was happening. I would, so I think that's something you have to expect. But I think we're off to a good start, so we'll see where we're at. And then in 6 months, again, if the council says we need to take another lap because we hadn't heard enough or there's new ideas that need to be vetted, then we'll do that.
Can I offer just one item? This is not an uncommon situation at the first kind of event community, and some of the concerns are spot on. And because you're concerned, I've never run a restaurant. We've designed a few. The opening of a restaurant is by word of mouth, and then you get the stories right. People will believe you. It's very. I mean, I'm sure they will believe the newspaper also, but it starts with word of mouth. And making sure that people understand what's at stake, what the opportunity is. It's one of the reasons why we're here on a regular basis. The million cups of coffee is kind of a sort of it's a humorous line, but it is also a way to meet people where they're most comfortable. And what we have found, and one of the reasons why we rely on multiple venues, is that very often in those individual meetings, you will have a lot of somebody who really is really afraid, and they'll find out, I don't have anything to be afraid of, or somebody who just doesn't know and they want to know, but they didn't find the newspaper, they couldn't click the same thing. So we'll go find them. We will. I mean, because of Brad and Sam's networks here, and we will find the different groups, and we will probably find some of the smaller organizations in Yountville. If we don't have a good let's just say attendance very quickly, we're going to go probably shake the trees a little bit, and we know how to do that.
I was going to suggest a few things, perhaps an insert in the Sun, not just a page in the Sun, but an insert. Also, we've got a lot of events coming up in the coming month or two. Certainly, Yountville Residents Bash is coming up. We've got concerts this weekend. We've got movies going on. We've got an art opening this week. So if we can enlist all of our commissions to be voices when Hillary and Brad can't be there, and all of you in the room. I mean, word of mouth starts with all of us, but our public events, even Yountville Night Out, I know you started relaying this message. That's the way we disseminate this information.
Just wanted to give you kind of, I really liked your presentation. I really thought it was great. A lot of inspiration. One thing I've been kind of thinking about is some way, I think I also love the name Yountville Commons. I think that's going to be very key. We've got our community center. It's got a lot of C's and O's and M's in it too. And we're only really separated by this hotel. So, I know it's going to be a very individual space, unique like many of our little cluster groups, but if there's some creative idea you have to somehow connect our community center and this together, we're only separated by, really a short block, which is, faces the Bar de Sono, and to kind of bring it all together a little bit, I think that would be, I have no idea how you would go about that, but just, a little buzz in your head sometime.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I will add to that by saying, as part of the interim, we talk about a landscape plan, and we've, I think, set aside $100,000 to do landscape within the interim phase. But landscape plans typically include sign packages. So signage is a piece of the interim, and we will start to make that connection. And I think, obviously there's more, that money's only going to go so far. But I think when you look at signage, I will tell you, there's an opportunity also in town to kind of take signage to the next level. I think there's some interesting things going on. So we will, once we know how much money we have left over at the end, we'll figure out how to start the sign stuff. So we'd be interested in people's thoughts on how you make those connections, because signs are part of it. I think there's also just, breadcrumb type approaches. We do that very well with public art here, and I think that's another piece that we're going to, think about.
Years
those are
ago,
some
we
of
used to be terrified of signs. Now we have some signs. We're not so terrified of them anymore because they can be done correctly. So, thanks.
That's Carol.
Whitney's, she probably would be here if Diver McAvoy, but she's at a conference for 3 days in Sacramento, so I volunteer there. But little flyers, because I volunteer at the center, doesn't have to be this large, but if we had something like that we could give out to there's a lot of residents that come in. There's dog treats in the front. You'd be amazed. Regulars that come in every day for their dog treats. So, I mean, just little, if there's a handout, I think
That's
Robin's
awesome.
idea of insert in the flyer is great. But if we had these, like, not ASAP, but way before the next week, the publication of the paper, we could do that. And I bet the community center, just kind of thinking that way. And we got here a little bit late. Apologize, my husband and I. But maybe if you could just say again, or if it's publicized, the hours that you'll have here and the days of the week and that info.
It's actually I think it's on the bottom. Was it on the bottom of the card or just the slide?
QR code.
Yeah, it's from Tuesdays from 9 to 12. You can make an appointment through whatever the software is that you use, Hillary. So you can make an appointment directly, and then once a month there'll be a Saturday session.
Even if that's on that little flyer, I'm thinking that would give people.
It says it right here under office hours.
Yeah, but as you know, Hillary is a whiz at if you need a different format because you have a pamphlet slot versus a whatever, we can adapt this definitely. So.
On the counter in the back, there would be in a pocket, the chamber.
Whatever you need. I used to have business cards that had similar sort of, this was a different thing, but even business cards can serve, because QR codes are so nice. And most people, even though some people are challenged with, and I'm not, anyway, we can do a lot of different things, I guess. So,
I just have one comment. Terrific. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be able to get those things out. One of the advantages of having this office right there in room 11 as part of the building is that we will have a map like this up, and if it's okay with the visitors, we will put a pin in where they live. So, as soon as you walk in, you'll like, wow, you haven't had a lot of visitors. I know that person. They're going to want to see you, but if we do this even half as well as I think we will, people will be able to walk in. You will be able to walk in. And we can bring that thing to a community center or an event like this, and like, wow, they all came in, but they all came in by themselves because they just wanted to have this one-on-one. And that's actually the biggest benefit, is not just the one-on-one conversation, but being able to show people who, and these kind of people, who think they're speaking for more than just themselves. You are, of course, exceptions to the rule because you were elected to speak for people, but it's a way to make sure that that everybody participating understands the number of voices that have already happened, and it's a very nice, quiet, passive way to remind folks as the process goes on.
I just wanted to make a comment following up on several people's comments about connections, and I think that both for our meetings and workshops and for the actual project or place, connections are the really big deal, and which is why I brought about the idea of changing the way the front of the town hall looks to invite and to create a welcoming feeling, and I feel that that's really a necessary component of the finished site plan, so that people feel like it's informally comfortable and welcoming, and that there's a clear designation of where it's okay to be and where maybe they shouldn't go, so that it feels like a neighborhood, right? So all of the pieces of that site should be connected to the neighborhoods around and also to each other, including the community center. So it just feels like that theme is not only about how we get people here for the meetings to plan, but also in the finished product.
Great comments. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
So my question, and I guess it's probably kind of a chicken and egg, but at what stage of the process do we get a clearer picture of, because and Brad has done, I think, a pretty masterful job of some interim uses that we can see happening while the planning goes on, which could take a long time depending on the CEQA. At what point will we begin to think about what buildings will be staying? Because my sense is not all of these buildings will be staying that are part of the school, and what parts won't. So that's question number one. And then related to that, and again, it's kind of chicken and egg, but at what point will we decide what type of units we want? I realize these are all rental, I believe, not for sale, but whether we're going to be talking studios, 2 bedrooms, things that could have an impact on what you would design and what things would look like.
Yeah. So they refer to that as the unit mix. This is an architect term, just so you know. But I think first question, we intentionally didn't, spend, and we don't intend to spend much money on this southern building, which is the closest building right here to Town Hall, outside the window. And that's because it's the oldest building, and as we started to work through it, and John and others did all the inspections, it was just too questionable with the systems, those are the sewers, the HVAC systems, et cetera. So, I think that's, we didn't want to demolish it and what have you. I mean, this was different than the bungalows because those were temporary structures, and I felt, as we were making value judgments, these are things that you have to kind of really get into the details. As it relates to the wellness center, as we're calling it now, and the Commons Hall, those will be up as long as, first of all, they're functioning and used by the community until a plan is adopted.
But it's foreseeable they might go as part of a long-term.
Well, yeah, I think.
Or is that a possibility?
I've had people ask me, "Are we going to demolish Town Hall?" And I said, listen, we're going to start with a blank canvas.
Okay.
We're going to be smart about phasing so that you can phase projects, because in many cases, the financing issue is a phasing issue. There's only certain chunks you can afford at certain times. So we'll be smart about how these pieces fit together. And again, if this is an asset that the community loves, everyone's using it, clearly we could design a wellness center incorporated into a new building. I mean, that's something that Brendan's done a lot of. That's expensive, so that'll be a cost question as we talk about phasing. So we'll be smart about phasing, but I think at this point I want everyone to think of it as a blank canvas,
All of it as a blank canvas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to the unit mix, that's sort of the same, as you say, a little bit of a chicken and egg, but I do think now that we have a Measure S committee and now that we've invested Measure S dollars and we define workforce housing, that sort of leads you to the unit mix question. And so you have to go through that process to get to that answer, and I do think when we get to Measure S, there's another architect that's Piatok, who we've already signed the contract. They're on the sidelines because we're not talking about unit mix and housing types. We got to get through more of the planning, more of the stuff that Brendan's talking about. But I do hope that when we get to Measure S, which is, I'm looking at, I don't have is it October? I think it's October on the schedule. We're trying to determine the actual date. I want to have a real Yountville conversation about workforce housing, because that's a broad subject, and we all know I think we've been in a housing crisis in California since 1978. I'm trying to remember when we formally declared a housing crisis, but this is something where we can do our part, but it should be for Yountville, right? This isn't, we're not building the Solano Avenue project just because we need to maximize units and we do have RENA numbers like everyone, but I think that's where I hope that conversation starts to get a little more crystallized, and then we can go to unit mix type of conversation.
And then just really quickly, a couple people have spoken about water features and, always the interest and discussion around swimming pools and things like that. Am I correct that the PRAC would be the time that they would be the group that would kind of take feedback on what sort of recreational facilities we want to see, be it pools, dog parks, baseball fields? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And I think it's good because, as you know, Sam and the PRAC recently adopted a master plan. So this is a game changer in that we didn't have the site to consider when the master plan was being developed and vetted, but there was a lot of work that went into that. So there was a lot of conversation about recreational amenities and what the need is. So I think you have a good start on that. But, as you saw in the image, we did put the swimming pool. We were clear that, people miss the old pool, and I think that's a whole scar that I don't think will necessarily heal. But I mean, we want to talk about those things. It just always gets into like those space and cost questions, and we're prepared to have that through PRAC, and then.
So PRAC would be where, if someone has a particular recreational interest in the site, that would be their focal point. Then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just comment on the unit mix issue? That we've drawn some fit tests, and we'll keep drawing fit tests. We don't need to have a lot of conversations. We're just architects. We just kind of start drawing. It's the way we think. And a good example is that those school kind of fit tests that happened as a way that the school tried to see what could really be on the site as a way to price it. 47 units, I think I counted on one of those slides really quickly. I'm always counting things. And 47 three-bedroom houses looks different than 47 studio and one-bedrooms. This town is not short of 2- and 3-bedroom homes. This town is short of what happens when you are an empty nester or living by yourself, which is 50% of the town, and you're living still in a 2- or 3-bedroom home, and you don't want to leave town. Well, there's a missing. This is what when you talk about the missing middle, we're not talking about 5-story buildings. We're talking about a whole bunch of unit mixes where somebody at the very start of their career and at the very end of their career can move in smaller households or even by themselves, which is now the dominant household number for the state of California and for this town. So when we talk about unit mixes, it's definitely in context with the rest of the town. And this town is missing, as everybody knows, 1-bedrooms and studios, because it was a very successful model to build 2- and 3-bedroom homes for a very long time. I
still think it still is, by the way.
Right.
Anyway, okay. Here, I'll go to. Well, here, y'all want to go to you, and then you can pass to Joe.
Yeah. Okay. I forgot to ask before. Is the baseball field? I have a lot of people kind of curious. Is that going to stay part of it? Because they've done a lot of work. The fencing part of it's gone down because that's now the farm. Where the coffee shop is. That am I under the right impression?
You mean the snack shack?
Yeah. Is that going to be used? That's where the hoops is going to have it at that location.
Yes.
That's why. Okay. Just make sure.
They have agreed to be open for baseball games.
Oh, good.
If and when baseball returns. So I think we intend in the short term to work with.
So the baseball field is going to stay intact there.
Again, I want to think today is a blank canvas.
Okay.
It's like the question, is dog park going to stay? It's like these are all sort of questions that we need to work through the process to resolve.
Okay. And the other part is there. So with the slides that you showed, because I missed the beginning of it, is there a section that is already predetermined that that's where the housing would be in this whole complex? No, that's still up, completely up. So the dog park is temporary in that location?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Can you remind everybody again what the RENA number is, and do you anticipate this site fulfilling that need or requirement that we have?
Our current RENA number, and for those that don't speak housing, that's the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, which comes from the state through HCD, Housing Community Development, and it goes through what you refer to here as ABAG, if you're familiar with ABAG, which is the Bay Area Associated Governments. And then it trickles down to the municipal level. So our number is 73. So we have to build 73 units at different affordability levels through the next cycle. And I don't want to get into how many units we can fit on the school site yet. I think that gets into the unit mix and gets into all those questions. But clearly this can put a big dent into our arena. And I think we have to be prepared for that, just so everyone knows, because every housing cycle, the teeth keep getting a little sharper at the state, and they keep trying to sort of threaten that you're going to lose local control unless you build your fair share of housing. So it's important to meet the RENA numbers to maintain the local control that gives us the ability to make our own land use decisions.
I guess part of my confusion is I kind of feel like there isn't really a clear process. Like, people are asking questions about the low-income housing, let's say, and I feel like there's already been a decision made for that part. Or the dog park shows up, and it's like, well, where was that discussion? Why are things taking place, and there isn't even a plan for this whole property yet. In the 80s, there was a bunch of different community outreach where people would show up. The community hall was one area, and people could get together. I think there were 50, 100 people show up, and they get in small groups and discuss what should we do with the remaining properties in town. I was kind of expecting that would be more of the process, and then from these get-togethers, you would realize, okay, here's 5 or 10 areas that people were really concerned about. And that time it was open space and whatever those concepts are. So I kind of feel like the cart's ahead of the horse a little bit, and I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from. And it seems like the process is going really fast without any community input. So I don't know. I just think a little more discussion on the overall plan and what elements the community wants needs a little more research, I guess.
Are you going to a slide? Yeah, I think first of all, as we said, this is the beginning of a 6-month process. I think we're making a distinction between the interim, which includes the dog park, and the other 5 things that I kind of went through that is budgeted for the interim. So those are interim in the sense that they can change. We want to make use of the asset that we acquired. That was discussed at council at 2 levels. We talked about at the open house. I think there's been a long conversation through PRAC and others about dog parks, and I think that's all part of this. But I think I focus you here because I think there's all of these opportunities, and I do think that when we talk about Measure S, we have to recognize that when we acquired the site, roughly a third of the cost of the site was borne by Measure S funds. So Measure S is workforce housing, by the way. It's not low-income housing. It's workforce housing. And I think there's an important distinction because people use different terms in housing. So I'm going to continue to use workforce because I think there's flexibility on how Measure S was passed and how we can work with that to meet the workforce of Yountville. And then you get into RENA and low income and all these sorts of terms that I think people use. And I've been using them for 20 years. So I understand what they mean. But I do think there's a process outlined here today that we've given ample opportunity to do exactly what you're saying. Like, let's gather and let's talk about it. So that's...
I guess, though, my point is we were talking about things over here that may happen, and one of them, let's say, was the dog park, and it happened, but I was being told over there, nothing's going to happen. These are just concepts for us to look for the future. I didn't realize the future is going to be 4 months, from that point. So I didn't understand that if I really wanted to say something or have a strong opinion, I should have done it at that original meeting and said, I think instead of spending 80 or 100 grand on a dog fence, let's put that money towards something else or whatever. So I'm just saying I think it's not clear what the process is, or at least I wasn't clear on, okay, these are going to be interim uses. So that's all I'm saying. I think what a lot of people are saying is, I think it just to me needs to be a little more clear. But
I think that if people know that the amount of more people might have come.
On the mic, please.
If more people, I think, hadn't realized the timeline so much, for the paper or things, Hillary, you're great sending the stuff out, but sometimes life gets busy and you just, there's this meeting's today, or you can't make it to the council meetings. I get that, or PRAC when I was on it. We had very few residents that ever came unless it was an issue with their, well, I won't go into that one. But I think if more people knew this 6 months and this whole process, like Tom was saying, that more people may have shown up.
But I would just say, let's not act like this is the last meeting. And I think as it relates to the dog park specifically, there was a very robust discussion with the council that decided that we were going to do what we did. And so I think, the slide that Brendan showed, and you can get into the matrix of things that are happening simultaneously, but as we talk about the future of the site, I want to just continue to emphasize this is the beginning of the process. So, and as we said, this is for a council meeting, this is not a bad showing. Let's face it in terms of Yountville. We are doing the open house. We're doing the one-on-ones. We'll go to people. we're committed to getting the word out and hearing from the community. And like I said earlier, there will always be that criticism. And I think this is sort of, in some level, where people criticize government in general for not making decisions, because you have to at some point decide. And I think we try our best. Just so you know, we have a lot of laws that require that we do open meetings, and we do what we're doing at 3 o'clock today, where we make decisions, obviously, with an agendized thing. So I think, I appreciate the comments. We will try our best, and I think we are off to a good start. And I appreciate Hillary, and I think, part of the reason that Brendan is in that chair is because he was willing to do the 1,000,000 cups of coffee. When I heard that, like you said, I've never heard of that happening before. So I think that's a unique opportunity for everyone in this room, plus everyone that isn't in this room, because, a lot of people don't like to come to this room. I mean, I think that's the other thing. You have to face facts, right? This isn't where you go for your, joyful Tuesday afternoon. Like, this is usually where you come to express your concerns about decisions that are being made in your town. So I think that's another, elephant in the room we have to address. This is why we're going out into the other environments, so you feel more comfortable.
Wait a second.
Please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Am I on? Yes. So I hope people look at this, if we're still using maybe restaurant terms, or that, like anything, this is a soft opening. But I'm very, very impressed with the fact that we've hired architects and planners that are going to continue a tradition that Yountville had. In the 90s, we had an architect that came, and we were talking early on about we didn't have a post office. We had a laundromat where the community center is, and we had a planner that came and really talked about these same images of do no harm, and we seek to make a place. And his report that came out was Yountville as a place, as a heart, and there was heart images through the community. And I think that's what we're starting here. We're talking about a opportunity where the community for months will be able to give their input. We have to remember that we've just purchased this property. It's 4 months or so since we've owned the property. So it's a beginning process, and it's a planning process. And I understand people's concerns about not being a part or not hearing, but I know that we'll make a process where people will be able to input. And I think you also have to accept, the council consider the concept of interim uses and repurposing, as you talked about, or repurposing, because we didn't want a process where 3 years went by and property sat vacant. And the fact that community for years has talked about a dog park, or a place where there could be a coffee stand. And so this repurposing of the library to a wellness center and a dog park and a place where people can come and meet and have a cup of soup or a cup of coffee, or I think are wise planning to use the property in a way as we plan in the future. And it also gives the residents an opportunity to come and meet. I mean, your office will be here. People coming onto the Yountville Commons to exercise, to walk their dogs, to have a cup of coffee will give them a connection to the property and the process, and will see our signage and will be invited to make their comments known. And I don't discount concerns that it feels like things happen quickly, but I hope you value the fact that we realize it was better to open and use the property than let it sit and be vacant. And so that there's the needs that residents have really asked for about the loss of a wellness center or not having an attempt to see how a dog park would work in the community, our efforts to do that. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Eric said, and I mean this very sincerely. There is a sincere effort, I think, on everyone on the council and certainly staff to hear what people have to say and do something the community wants. I mean, I just can't overstate that. Everybody really does want to hear what people think, and it is a chicken and egg. Until you put something out there, it's hard for people to react. So I think the way it works is we do have to put something out there. But it is a pretty sincere effort as far as I can see, and we maybe need to do more in terms of trying to publicize it, but there is no effort here. As near as I can tell, and I've been sitting here, no one has an agenda other than to do something the community wants. And in terms of the interim uses, I totally get that. And I know this, and I, as all of you know, a big proponent of the dog park concept, and it was one of the things in the master rec plan that went through a 6-month or a year development that was commonly identified. But it's an interim use, and yes, we did build a fence, but I hear we might be, and thank you, John, and your staff, it looks very nice. But if it's ultimately not what the town wants, yes, we are out the cost of the fence, and maybe it could be repurposed, I've heard, so it's not totally out the cost of the fence. But it's an interim use, and as Eric said, if it's not something people don't want, then that's fine too. The effort is really to do what the community would like, consistent with economics. I would really like a big swimming pool, but maybe that could work if we find the right financing or something, but short of the fact we have to be economically sound, I don't think there's any effort. And then the other thing I want to say is I've already decided this is probably going to have some ugliness. I wasn't here during the community hall discussion, but I know that there was a lot of controversy over whether it should be built and what it should look like. So we're going to have some of that. I mean, I think that's sort of going to be part of the process. But in terms of the effort to make this a sincere, open process, I cannot overstate that, at least from my viewpoint. So I really want to communicate that.
To build on what both Councilmember Knight and Vice Mayor Tripp have said, I want to ask what more could we do to put the word out that would be effective to get more input? Because that's the key to the success that we all want. You guys are here, so you saw this announcement somewhere, but between the paper, between next door, between our word of mouth, what do you feel like we're missing, and how can we amp that up to make sure that we're giving ample time? Tom, and I'm asking you, what are we missing? How could we get more people? No, you said...
I don't think it's fair you're calling me out.
No, I'm not. No. I'm not calling you out. This is a conversation.
I'm just saying...
You said you referred to something from the 80s.
I think it's a smart use of funds to build a dog park, but I don't think everybody in this town wants that because there's no plan yet. I'm just saying I haven't heard, again, like in the 80s and the 90s, I don't need that.
I have a feeling you didn't want it.
It's for the TV. Yeah. People on TV will call me tomorrow.
Yeah, let's talk about the 80s and 90s.
I'm just saying when some properties took 13 years to develop, this one here in Humboldt's taken 6 years to develop, I feel like this is going to take like 6 months to develop. That's my concern. Okay, and that's part of communication. And when I see a dog park going in, I get using the asset. But if we have to have a dog park and a coffee stand, on the other hand, for us to meet in Yountville, I feel that's kind of sad. I don't think we need that. I'm in Yountville, and I see people, and I talk to people all the time. People I agree with or don't agree with or whatever. We're all neighbors. That's why I love living here. So I think it just feels like, this process is going really quickly. I want to know, that's why I'm here, is there going to be something like the 80s where there was a huge emphasis on what does the community want to do with the Barzono property, the church property, this property. Like, there was a discussion about all that, and that's all I'm saying is then people would show up and they would give their 2 cents at 6 o'clock at night on this is what I think is going on.
That's what I was asking.
That's what I said. That's what I'm asking. Is that going to be the process? Okay. And I don't really feel like that quite is what's happening, but maybe it is.
Maybe we need to do another one of these very meetings.
Can I? So here's the process the way I understand it, and I want to make sure that you understand what I understand, and if it's different, we should talk about that really quickly. And I want to do it in front of you, sir, and anybody who's in this room or anyone who's going to be hearing about it or watching it remotely. This process is in 4 parts. The first part is meetings just like this. public meetings, recorded meetings with what I would call expert counsel. You're the boss. The town council represents the interests, and you're in charge of this town. And we're going to have another one just like this at the very end. And it's not going to be a meeting like this because you will already have gone to many other open houses and other expert council meetings where they will have seen a lot of iteration. You will be talking about the plans. You will be talking about the plans very quickly. And we're trying to not hurry it, and we're not trying to slow it down. We're trying to just make sure that it's happening at a pretty organic pace. We don't want anyone thinking like, well, I went to a meeting and I haven't seen anything. That's just as bad as, and sometimes worse than like, hey, I said something and, now it's something else. So that's part one. The PRAC, the ZDRB, the Measure S, these are what I call expert council meetings with very established points of view and kind of constituencies around parks or housing or whatever. The other piece, and I think sort of the part that you're talking about, there's going to be 4 of those events. Open houses where the subject is very much this parcel, and I guess we could be talking about interim uses, but I think it's going to be very much focused on, permanent asset designs, which might include dog parks or interim dog parks or whatever. I definitely don't want to get into the dog park conversation, but I love my dog, but that second part, that open house, is a this, not that. And I'm very happy to break those groups into smaller groups. I'm very happy to have smaller groups come to our office. I'm very happy to go to smaller groups, whether it's a condominium association or anything else like that. So there's definitely going to be a lot of small group meetings, whether you meet together and then come and tell us what you want or what you don't want, or we all sort of sort it out, Our goal is to, when these iterative plans and many alternatives get posted, we don't want any surprises when they get posted. We want yeah, that's what I said. Alternative B, that's what I said. That's what I want. Now, it may not be the one everybody else wants. That's democracy. But the idea is to draw everybody's idea and make sure that everyone, is this what we're seeing? The third part is, of course, the million cups of coffee, right? It's one at a time, and mostly to make it transparent so you know what we're hearing on a continual basis. The fourth part is us working away alone with staff and on our own in our office, and taking these ideas and putting them up on paper so quickly you can see oh wow, that's what a 2-acre dog park looks like, and that's what a 1/4-acre dog park looks like. Wow, the 2-acre dog park uses up a lot of land. Maybe the 1/4-acre dog park is, I'm picking on the dog parks. So I think mostly I have great confidence right now. I think we should all have great confidence that what you're missing from those 80s, those small charrette type of activities, are when I see the open house events in August, October, December, and then early in the new year, is where that's going to happen. And I'm looking forward to it, and we will be prepared with not a whole bunch of words, but with actual potential plans. This one has the pool. This one doesn't have the pool. This one has 50 units. This one has 25 units. And this one has 85 parking spots. This one has 8 parking spots. All those chicken or egg sort of type moments. Does that help? That's the process that I think we're about to start. And it's 4 very distinct pieces, and they all follow one another. And it will feel like a spiral sometimes, but it is iterative.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tom, I think you're referring to that process was the general plan process, which dealt with many parcels in town. And this is very specific to this particular parcel. And as I said in my previous comments, this seems like a quick process, which is both good and bad. I have to look at Brad because we didn't even own this property, and there was talk about buying the property, and Brad shows up, and within a few months we own the property, and now here we are talking about developing it. And so kudos to you, but it's a different beast. Things are going to move fast, so you better tell your neighbors that if they want to play and they want to have an input, they got 6 months, and there's a timeline. And I think it's a wonderful property, and it's a great opportunity for us. But it is different than how the pace has moved in town before, and it's going to be quick. So good for us.
I just wanted to make a statement. I think the idea that this process is running fast is just because it's organized and we have a goal in mind, right? So this timeline is indicating the information gathering portion of the process, which hopefully will address everyone's concerns and everybody's ideas and everybody's fantasies of what could be over there. But once the drawings start to come out, I think then there's room for additional discussion based on some sort of tangible ideas that are on paper. I don't think that's on this timeline. And once it comes back to the council, we as a group with the public will wade through all of the options. And there's no number of meetings that's scheduled. There's no timeline for that part of the process. And I think if we get a lot of input at that point, that might take the discussion back around again. And I don't want people to feel like somehow because we're stating this timeline that that's the only opportunities you have. I mean, those are the best opportunities so that your concerns or your comments get registered, but we will have more discussion after that. And I think this process really allows for the way that people process differently. And so if you need a drawing in order to make a comment, we'll have that part of the process. If you're more the idea person, come out at the beginning of the process and just like pile it on, because everybody has a different way of making their ideas go forth in the world. So I'm hoping that we address everybody's learning style or thought process in this timeline and in the subsequent meetings on the council. So, and also I want to address the interim use, because this property was a big investment for this town. I think it was the right investment, and I think we will reap the benefits for a very long time. But having a piece of property that's not utilized is bad for the property and bad for the residents. We felt that using the property, taking input from several meetings, including the first meeting that we had about the property, taking those suggestions of what people wanted to see in the town and actually making them happen on an interim basis to use the property is a gift for all of us. And I really want to stress that there are a lot of people in town who want a dog park. So if it's not the use that you would like, then that's something we need to hear also. So we want things in addition, not to take away from. So that's what I feel like we need to be more positive and be more out there with our comments.
Can I?
Final
Just
thoughts.
You know, I think that you know, we sit at these. I've been sitting at this dais for a long time, and over you know, just the time I've been here, you know, the amount of people that come and fill our chairs is pretty small, and it's getting smaller. So maybe we're just boring and a lot of the stuff we have to do is not very exciting. But, I'm kind of hearing, we actually heard from several people about, how do we, get people to come. I think it's a big challenge. I really don't know how. Maybe we can come up with, we've got a lot of timelines up there. Maybe we bring a fun food truck in on those, days where we're going to have an open house. Something to say, hey, don't forget, we're here. So I think we can also do more instead of just the standard processes that we take, and maybe we all kind of develop a buddy system. Hey, I'm going to council meeting. You're going to come too, or you're going to come, and say stuff. So maybe some kind of creative stuff, because we broadcast when our meetings are going to be all the time. It's we have it all on the website. We're kind of saying some of the same things. So, I'm even open to ideas on, hey, how do we get more people to kind of come to some of these open houses, because it's exactly what we want. And obviously, if people aren't coming, we're not doing it right. So help us do it right. Tell us some great ideas. So I'll throw out a food truck idea. So There you go.
Really quick comment. To amplify what Pam was saying, the interim uses was important, and it could also be instructive. If it turns out that a lot of people don't go down to the farm stand, not useful, then, that's information. Same with the dog park. And then, when you think of it from a financial viewpoint, and my hat's really off to Brad, because he has really encouraged us to use it from an interim viewpoint. We invested $10 million. So if you put that in the bank, which we used to have it in the bank, that's like at 5% interest, which is not beyond or investment. That's $500,000 a year, roughly $40,000 a month. So it's a good thing, from a financial and practical basis to try to use the park. So I think that makes good sense. And again, I also agree with what Pam said. If we come to the end of this really intentionally designed process that we're investing a lot in, and we don't have the answers we need, we can keep going. I mean, I'm not suggesting that has to happen or should happen, but it's an option.
And I just want to add, last thing, thank you, is that it's important for us to just for the residents to get involved and not to be caught up by this timeline that you see here, because in 30 years I've been involved with the town and planning, I can't think of a process we've gone through a planning process and only had one zoning and design review board meeting and one Parks and Rec or Community Hall Commission when it was that back then. We had more. And so I like the idea of the mayor's suggestion that there's no better way to bring people together than to have food. And
alcohol, but bring your own.
So be involved. Realize that there's a purpose to have a plan for a timeline, because if we said it's going to take us 3 years to plan this, then the downside people would say you're going to spend too much time and too much money doing it. So there's a happy place where we need to start somewhere, but we encourage you to get involved, make your comments known, and come out for a cup of coffee. So thank you.
Just my final comment is we're seeking to understand, so we're not trying to zero anybody out, but it's in that dialogue, it's in those words that we're going to learn more. What could we do better? How can we learn from the community? And what do you need to know from us?
Okay, so thank you, everyone, first of all, for being here. Those that you are here, I agree with, we'll try everything, food trucks, etc. I do think, from my point of view, and I've been doing this 20 years, this is the most organized and innovative outreach program I've been involved with, to have the 1,000 million cups of coffee and to have the open houses and to organize it, where I do feel also in Yountville, the PRAC and the Measure S and the ZDRB are the expertise that you're talking about. You literally have, designers and planners on your ZDRB. You have committed PRAC, Park and Rec people. Measure S, we now have Michael Molino for, we have who represents obviously one of our biggest employers in TKRG. We have the general manager of hotels. So we have a lot of expertise that we intend to tap into, and I think it's critical because I do think this process gets to be very challenging. And one of the things I like to say in city management, I've been saying a long time, and with the staff, is in essence, we do the hard work so we can make hard decisions easier, because these are hard decisions, right? And so the idea of taking a lap and coming back to council after we've gone through this will hopefully present an easier decision, but it's going to be a very challenging decision because there's going to be 1,000 points of view of what we should do over there, and it's up to the council to decide. At the end of the day, you're elected representatives. So that's the system and the process that we live by, and we have to respect it. But if they tell me take another lap, we'll take another lap, or go back to so-and-so and talk to so-and-so, and we'll do that. And I think that's always part of the process, too, is sometimes you get to that decision point, and it's sort of like the old, used to call, what was it, the want to be a millionaire thing where you want to phone a friend or ask the audience or whatever. You kind of want a little bit more support before you press the button. And I think that's also part of what we're going to do. So I think, thank you. I want to make a complicated thing just a little more complicated because I do think, and I think that I heard a lot of connecting the dots. So it was like a good theme. What's behind me is what the council did through their goal setting in January and February. After we had a series of study sessions that led to these priorities, and the three priorities, sorry, I'm flipping through everything because I'm at the end, that emerged, and you can see at the top, was the Yountville Elementary School at the time, now the Yountville Commons. The other two that got 5 dots were what says Explore Microgrid and Ped Bike Master Plan. I'm now referring to those as Energy Resilience and Mobility Plan because as we started to work on those have started to flush out. And I think they're huge opportunities when we look at the school, right? And energy reliability is a huge discussion. I don't want to get into it today, but when you have projects and you talk about what I'm talking about here, distributed energy resources, having more resilience so we can have what I call at the end a spectrum of controllability. So when you're talking about cars charging, and they now have vehicles that'll charge your home, and you get into all these interesting conversations. They intend to get implemented either post-disaster, because people throw a lot of money at things because we've gone through a major incident where you then have government stimulus, or through projects like the Yountville Commons, where you can think of those things at the front end, like they did at the Yountville Community Center. And I think that the fact that we use these geothermal sinks to help us cool and heat the water and help, in essence, take energy load off of that building was really innovative back then. And now with the school site, there's this talk of enhanced geothermal, so I'm trying to understand what that means. I was actually at Stanford a couple weeks ago learning about all of this. So it's really exciting when you hear all of the things that are happening in the world of energy, and I do want us to be thinking about that because that's another priority of the council. We all have figured out solar, but battery backup, all these things are coming into fruition. And then finally, mobility, right? Mobility is a term that's used for more than just peds and bikes. You can talk about car share and bikes. These are these glow-in-the-dark bike lanes that they now have that are rage in Europe, where it's just a paint that glows at night. But all of these things are another thing I want everyone to be thinking about, because if we can make it better connections, and these are physical connections, for people, whether it's walking or biking or having opportunities, we can then do a lot back to Yountville Green to, do our job to, hopefully lower greenhouse gas emissions, do all the things that we're trying to do at a global scale, but be an example at the local scale, because not only is that the right thing to do, but I think it promotes our community for visitors, and it makes us hopefully more resilient as residents. So I just want to end there as more things to think about. But this has been really great. If there's any final words, I know you all tell me you need a break, and then
I'm going to just thank everybody for coming. And let everybody know that we started at 11:30, and we need a quick adjournment to our next meeting, which starts at 3. That might go on for a while. So with that, can I get a motion from someone in the council to adjourn to our 3 o'clock regular council meeting?
I move to adjourn.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank you for coming. See you in 11 minutes.